Please be seated and turn your attention to the video screens. Brothers, sisters, and guests, please welcome Rick Spence, Chaplain of Reedy Creek Fire Professional Firefighters, Reedy Creek Fire Department, Florida Professional Firefighters, and Florida Fire Chiefs Association.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's a blessing and it's a privilege for me to be able to speak at these events, and I never take this for granted or never take it lightly. One of the things I want to mention to everyone this morning is everyone here has stepped up to serve in some capacity. A lot of you have served in the military. You've worked to protect our freedoms, keep this nation safe and free. Then all of you have taken that next step to go into your communities, to protect your communities and the citizens, and to serve them and to meet their needs. And each of you here have gone one other step further. You've stepped up to serve the men and women that work alongside of you, to protect their freedoms, to make their jobs safer, to make sure that they're taken care of in a way they deserve. The point I want to make is there's no higher calling than to serve others. And even if you don't share my faith and my values and my beliefs, there's something I want to read out of the Bible that Jesus Christ said. It's in Matthew chapter 25. He was talking to his disciples, and he said that when you go and help someone who's sick, who's hurting, who's in need, and care for them, this is the drop the mic moment. When you did these things to someone who is overlooked or ignored, you did it for me. And that's what you're doing out there when you're serving your citizens, when you're serving the men and women of your workforce. Let me pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you right now. We're thankful that we're able to assemble here this morning. We just pray that you'll bless each man and woman who is here, that they will just learn and benefit from the classes and the fellowship that takes place here. We just pray that you'll be with them as they're away from their families. Just keep them safe. We want to pray for the men and women who are on the job that are in those communities, protecting and serving these communities. Give them wisdom and guidance as they go about their task. And lastly, we want to pray for the men and women in our armed forces, that you'll keep them from harm's way and watch over them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please stand for the presentation of colors, led by the Reedy Creek Fire Department Pipes and Drums and the Joint Central Florida Honor Guard. And please remain standing for the anthems of our two great nations.
Quand ton bras s'est porté le paye, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. Et ta valeur de Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated and turn your attention to the video screens. Brothers and sisters, please welcome the trustees and executive board of the International Association of Firefighters. Region 1 Trustee, Alex Forrest, representing Canada. Region 2 Trustee, Mark S. Willett, representing the Eastern United States, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And Region 3 Trustee, Tony Mejia, representing the Western United States, the Canal Zone, and Guam. 1st District Vice President James Slevin, representing New York and New Jersey. 2nd District Vice President Mark Woolbright, representing Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, and Kansas. 3rd District Vice President Jay Colbert, representing Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. 4th District Vice President Andrew Pantelis, representing Maryland, the District of Columbia, Virginia, Delaware, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. 5th District Vice President Thomas Thornburg, representing Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, and South Dakota. 6th District Vice President J. Michael Carter, representing Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Yukon, and the Northwest Territory. 7th District Vice President Ricky J. Walsh, representing Washington, Montana, Idaho, and Alaska. 8th District Vice President Mark Sanders, representing Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, and Michigan. 9th District Vice President Michael Fernier, representing Colorado, Oregon, Utah, Wyoming, and Nevada. 10th District Vice President Stephen Gilman, representing Arizona, California, New Mexico, Hawaii, and Guam. 11th District Vice President Roy L. Sandy McGee, representing Oklahoma, Texas, and the Canal Zone. 12th District Vice President Walter J. Dix, representing Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and the Caribbean area. 13th District Vice President Fred LeBlanc, representing Ontario and Manitoba. 14th District Vice President Danny Todd, representing Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. 15th District Vice President David Burry, representing Newfoundland, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and Quebec. 16th District Vice President James B. Johnson, representing all federal firefighters of the United States and Canada. General Secretary-Treasurer of the IAFF, Frank V. Lima, and the General President of the International Association of Firefighters, Edward A. Kelly. Brothers and sisters, your IAFF trustees and executive board. Brothers, sisters, and guests, please welcome your IAFF General President, Edward A. Kelly.
Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Great to see you all. Great energy here. Think about the theme to our conference here. Excellence in leadership. Sometimes leading, you got a plan, you think you know what you're doing, you got to pivot and find a way to meet the moment. Right? It's what we do as firefighters. This morning, one of our employees who works in TARE got out of bed, got ready for work. Her responsibility was to man the booth out there, answer any questions for our affiliates that may want to learn a thing or two about TARE. And the professional singer we hired to sing the national anthems, plural, refused to sing the Canadian national anthem. I don't know what you Canucks did to him, but. So we told him, screw. And Shannon Lindsay, who works in TARE, got out of bed thinking she was going to man the booth today, got up here and absolutely displayed what excellence looks like. Right on, Shannon. Wherever you are out there, thank you. That's how we do it. How's that for teaching affiliate leaders how to be excellent? It's kind of like being on the job, right? We don't get to pick what fire we go to. We don't know what our next call is going to look like. We might have a plan in our heads, but you got to adapt, you got to overcome. You know, when you take an oath to be a firefighter, they send you to drill school or some sort of fire academy. They teach you whatever the rudimentary application of the trade is, where that department may be, whether you're an airport or municipality or doing wildland. Try to teach you the basics, what you do when you go out the door, and at some point, they say you're done in school, go to work. And you go out and you pay attention. You listen to those that came before you, walk through the doors of that firehouse, and they teach you a thing or two about a thing or two, and so you know the bell goes off, you go out the door, you learn a little more. Eventually, you get a call, you go into a fire, and more often than not, it's probably not the big one, you know, maybe food on the stove, or turns out to be something less than. And you learn, and you go, and you get a little comfortable, and you've been training. They've been teaching you every day. Said you graduated from drill school. You're ready, you know, you kind of get a little confident, kind of know what you're doing. You get a call to go to a fire, and you're going down the street, and you look out the window, and you go, the building's on fire, man. Oh, no. And you hold on to the coattails of those around you. You listen to what you're being taught, what you're being told to do. And more often than not, you come out the other side okay. And you learn a little bit from that battle. And you get a little better at your trade, get a little better at being a firefighter. Before you know it, show up to work one day, and some new kid's walking through with his gear. And you become the one that says, well, put your gear over here for now, and if you go down around the corner, it's where the lieutenant or captain's office is. Go report to him and tell him you're here and who you are. And you start being the mentor. You start showing them around. You know, the union business, you get elected one day, put your name on the ballot, usually something pisses you off, or someone headlocks you and tells you we need some help over here, get in the game. Or you make the mistake of not showing up to the union meeting the night of nomination and someone nominates you. There's no real drill school for that one. There's no academy really for union leadership. We can come to these, and there's a wealth of information here. You can learn so much from the classes and those teaching these classes. And the leadership in this room is amazing. Woe is our enemy when this room stands together. But kind of like when you go to the fire, kind of like when you go to the firehouse and you catch a fire and you hang on to those coattails and you have some mentors around you. And a big part of union leadership, knowing that there's not really a set of standard operating procedures, there's not really a hard, fast way to do the union business. You kind of learn as you go. You try to absorb as much as you can. Just like the firehouse, you don't pick what fires you go to. You're not sure what challenges are going to come your way as a union leader, what personal issues of a member are going to flow onto your desk, your plate, that you have to answer that challenge and help them, whatever it may be, or what large-scale problems you may have running the local, trying to make it safer and better, right? Job one, we don't want to be standing in front of a church. That's a broad problem, right? There's a lot packed into that. The denominator is always going to be politics, love it or leave it. In navigating the political world and creating enough political clout to affect change that will be meaningful in that tip of the spear preventing us being in front of a church, man, that's a tangled web. That's a lot to navigate. But righteousness is a good compass, you know? And thank you, Reverend Rick, for setting the compass for this conference, this summit. And all of us need mentors, right, in life. It's just the way it is. You don't realize who they are. Like your mentor, who you may not have met yet, could be sitting in this room. Your mentor doesn't have to be someone from your local. It doesn't have to be, you know, whoever served on the board before you. It could be the neighboring local. It could be someone across the countries. It could be over the border. But somewhere in this room, amongst the roughly 1,700 people in this room, whatever challenge you're dealing with at home, whatever it is, somebody in here had something similar and probably made some mistakes, right? Just like a fire. I never went to a fire where, when I got back to the firehouse, if I had a do-over, I would have done everything the exact same. Part of experience is making mistakes and learning from them. And what we're doing here is trying to take what we've learned and pass it to each other. And we've got some tremendous, tremendous leaders in this room. A lot of them are teaching. A lot of them aren't. A lot of them are here to learn. A good leader is a good student. I'm here to learn. And when you look at your executive board of the IAFF, you just saw their pictures and saw their names and saw where they represent, you know. I'm sure DVP McGee would tell you the Canal Zone sounds a lot better than it representing that it is, and DVP Dix would tell you that representing the Caribbean doesn't get you over the Bahamas all the time. But at the end of the day, one thing we all have in common, one thing that unites us in this room, is that we took an oath to do a job that requires us to risk our lives. And that's a heavy bet, man. And sometimes that comes home. And what unites us, and we can never lose focus of it, what unites us is that we owe it to each other, to ourselves, and to our families to protect each other, to stick together. And that's the secret to the success of the mission of the IAFF, is that no matter what happens, we have each other. And I like to bring it right back to a fire ground. Like, you get jammed up at a fire, and you call Mayday, no one's coming except your fellow firefighters. And in the union business, I'm not saying it's the exact same, but us is still us. And that own it to each other, that matters. Especially matters when you're unfortunately standing in front of a church that we do too often. And that's where we got to bring it home. And I want to bring home to us right here in our house somebody who's a tremendous leader, someone who's shown excellence over the course of their career, who served in many capacities in this union, all the way up to serving as your General Secretary Treasurer, who works his ass off, works very, very hard, studies his trade. I'd like to bring up our own GST, Frankie Lima. My man. So we want to talk a little bit about learning from each other and experience and where we've been and, you know, some of the trials and tribulations that forged us into who we are today. And I can tell you, I go back probably pushing north of 20 years with Frankie. And I remember when he came in as Local 112 LA City President, LA was decimating the fire department. They lost over 300 jobs. They were closing ladder companies and engine companies. 112 was under attack. 112 was getting hit hard. And we know what that translates to. That's us having a job that is more dangerous. Like President Biden says, if you want to make firefighters safer, give them more firefighters. It's the most important thing we bring to a fire emergency is trained and equipped personnel. So Frankie, now I happen to have I know a thing or two about this cat, but I know a lot of people don't. And give us a little background, like what year did you get on the job? What year did you get in the union?
Yeah, first of all, Ed, it's great to be here at the Affiliate Leadership Training Symposium alongside you as general officers of this international. What an honor. And to sit here in a crowd of firefighters, and you look at firefighting, a profession defined by leadership, sometimes you go, what do you say to them? And we hope to get you out of here with a lot of flavor of our experiences, of several leaders that will be coming up and speaking in front of you as well today. And when I think about back, as Ed said, we got introduced years ago, probably 20 years ago, by a Jim Perry in Los Angeles, God rest his soul, and a Mikey Mullane in Boston, God rest his soul. Our mentors, you know, look to mentors. We could learn from people how to do things right, and we want to emulate somebody. But as I was coming through the ranks of the department and of the union, I found that some of my biggest teachers were the worst leaders. I said, hey, I never want to do what that person did. I never want to be like that captain. So learn from that. But I came on the job in 1992. I was young. I was riding my bike to the firehouse. I had no family on the job. And I was riding my bike to the firehouse because my little league coach, Rudy Martinez, he changed my life. He brought us to the firehouse. And I was riding out when I was probably 15 years old, 16, got to see a lot of stuff and said, hey, I know this camaraderie and this profession, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. So I got on at the young age of 19, came through, went through a lot of big incidents in the civil unrest in Los Angeles in 1992 to the now the 30-year earthquake in Northridge. And, went through the career, trying to learn my job, trying to be competent, because when people look at leaders, they don't want leaders that can't do their job. So competency is always a key part of leadership in whatever you're doing, whether you're in the field, whether you're a captain, whether you're a seasoned firefighter, doesn't matter. But also as a union leader, you want to be competent, but you also want to have character where you have the ability to connect with others. You do a beautiful job with that, Ed. You're competent in what you do. You have the ability to think off your feet all the time, and I always look to you and want to emulate that type of behavior. But it's an honor to be here. It's
Well, I don't want to sit up here and kiss each other's ass, but I will say this, like, when I look at you, Frankie, you take the time to study everything we're doing. Like, I can appreciate it because I kind of had a similar path. Like, we got involved in the union one day, and you know, whatever led us to running for president of our locals. We had tough times during that time, and you were state vice president, DVP for the 10th district, biggest district. I don't know, where's Mark Sanders? I forget who's bigger, the 10th or the 8th. Depends what month it is. 10th is big, okay.
8,000 more locals, 10,000 more members.
I call it, oh yeah. So anyways, it's always about who's bigger. But anyways, being the 10th district DVP, I watched you work when we were on the board together. That was when we really started working together. But now being a treasurer, it's a different hat. It's a different animal being a treasurer than the other positions. And I've watched you really dedicate the time, pull apart every piece of what that responsibility is, and delve into it. And I remember you saying when we got elected, you said, it's going to take me time, but I'm going to know this inside and out. And I give you great credit because you've become that treasurer, and you've done a great job. So I don't want to sit up here and kiss each other's ass, but it's true. Hey, so pretty powerful, right? LA riots in '92, earthquake, and what was that? That was '94. I know you were at the ground zero. You're talking about major incidents, but what got you, what spawned you to run for a local 112 position?
Yeah, what got me, I was always very dedicated union brother, you know, as an apprentice carpenter for the United Brotherhood of Carpenters. And, you know, luckily this profession opened up for me. Been an IAFF member almost 32 years now. But what inspired me to finally run for office was really, I didn't like the direction of where our union was going at the time. And I put in the time early in my firefighting career where I really wanted to be competent, get a promotion, you know, get some things under the belt so you have street cred. You know, if you're a good firefighter, you got street cred on the union side, right? So what inspired me to run was, you know, we hadn't funded our PAC for over 10 years. At one point, the leadership at 112 said, hey, we have too much money in our PAC, let's stop funding it. What do you think, the members are going to say no? Yeah. And after 10, 12 years of fights and whatnot, 15-member council voted 13-2 to permanently eliminate 340 of our positions. And I was vice president at that time. I was vice president for about 10 years, longest serving on a local. And kind of inherited a 13-2 council voting against us, a mayor voting against us. And we would talk, and Mayor Menino in Boston was kicking your teeth in, and Mayor Villaraigosa in LA was beating us up. And that's the whole thing. What taught me also was the networking. If you're going through a problem as an IAFF leader, there's always somebody else out there that you could lean on. Hey, you're not going to have to reinvent the wheel. Use the IAFF. Use your district vice presidents. There's leaders out there that are able to help. But, you know, that was probably our biggest challenge, is coming in as a new president going, man, we need a dues increase. And just we're honest with the members, and of course, they voted it down, all right? Next year, went for a dues increase to fund the PAC. They voted it down, and the whole board was pretty scared, and hey, let's not do it. I said, no, third time's a charm. We're getting closer. We just missed it last time, and the third time we voted. Now we have, you know, a third PAC, millions of dollars in a PAC now, and as we'll see today, politics, you know, the mother's milk of politics is the PAC, you know, as per Al Whitehead. But
it's funny how similar like these stories are, because when I was in Boston, same thing. We're running low on dole. Try to get a dues increase. Vote it down. We had a what do we go? We had a 66. The Constitution said we had to have 66%, and we reduced it to like something like 2/3. It was like a 0.5% difference or something. And that was the difference in us getting the dues increase. And that was one of my champion causes that we pulled off. But we also had, you know, when we were fighting with Menino, we have collective bargaining in Massachusetts, but it's not binding arbitration, which means We spent millions of dollars. We were right in our fight. We won our arbitration case, but the mayor was powerful enough, more powerful than us. We didn't have our politics as tight as it should have been. And there was a 13-member city council, and we only had 3 votes to fund the arbitration award. And they came out and said they're gonna close the libraries and double class size for the kids, and the sky's gonna fall. And, we called a meeting, a membership meeting. We're in violation of our Constitution. Constitution says you gotta give 10 days notice for a special meeting. So we had to start the meeting from a parliamentary procedure standpoint without objection. So they said, what does that mean? It means if anyone objects to even having a meeting, we can all go home right now. But if we start the meeting, then we conduct the meeting. So they go, all right, let's hear what you got to say. And about 600 guys showed up to this meeting. It was like 48-hour notice. And we conduct the meeting, and we said, here's the deal. These politicians are more afraid of the mayor than they are of us. We need to change that. And the only way we're going to do it is if we put some money in the bank. And the way we have our contract in Boston, we get 13 holiday checks. Whether you work or not, you get a day's pay. And the funny thing was, you never knew when that day's pay was coming. Sometimes it came 3 weeks later, sometimes it came 6 weeks later. But when the checks came down, it was like, hey, the holiday checks are here. Everybody was excited. But it was found money. So we said, let's take $75 each per holiday check for 1 year and put some money in the bank. And a guy jumped up to the floor and said, question. He goes, I make a motion to amend. I go, here we go, Because believe me, 600 guys didn't show up to take money out of their pocket. They hadn't had a raise for 5 years. And he said, I make a motion to amend it to $100 a holiday check. Second. They voted unanimously to increase the assessment. Barry's shaking his head, he remembers this meeting. And we raised $1.3 million in about 8 minutes. Then myself, Bobby McCarthy, who was one of my mentors, he was state president at the time, Richie Paris, who was a vice president, he's in the crowd here somewhere. We drove over to one of those city councilors' house that was with us, one of the 3. And we had the other 2 meet us. And we said, hey, we just raised $1.3 million. Go tell those other city councilors we're coming for their heads. And that was the catalyst for us. The mayor couldn't lose face. The council collapsed on the mayor and said, hey, you gotta solve this. And we were able to negotiate a better contract than what the arbitration award was. And there's the sweet talk 'em, headlock 'em, and you gotta have the mother's milk to do it,
That's a great story, Ed, and it goes back to the politics. When we got our members 340 firefighter positions permanently cut, and we've restored a few, but we're still suffering. But we did go from a 13-2 against to a 15-0 plus a mayor for us, and we restored, I think, 10 out of 11 engines, and but it took work, it took relationships, it took putting in the time, it took your members being able to trust in the pack, being able to trust their leaders. And
let me ask you this one, leadership-wise, right? What would you say in the course of your coming up probably 20 years of leadership, more money, probably 25 years you've been an elected officer, what would you say was like the toughest thing you had to deal with?
I'd say probably one that sticks out in my mind was, and it's funny you say that because we're in a month of cancer awareness. We've increased our fight and study for cancer at the last convention. We're taking on the PFAS industry. With all that said, this was probably 10 years ago. I was a newer union local president, and we had a cadre that was burning and teaching young firefighters about flashovers, and they get into a Conex box and load it with OSB and burn it and come out and go back and in. So this cadre was just getting beat up, and it came to our attention that the OSB, it's just press board, it's aldehydes, and although you have respiratory protection, you're sweating, but it's skin absorbent. And it's just very bad stuff. So we took a stance as a union, told the chief, we need a cease and desist on this burn container. And we shut it down. And when you have members, influential members that might not be on your union board, but they're influential out there, popular captains, a lot of street cred, and they're leading this cadre, you know, with overtime as they want, but, you know, with one set of turnouts that they were taking home, being in the container, back and forth, no showers. We shut it down for about 3 years. And then you have members really beating us up at the union when we're doing this in their best interest for their health and safety for the long haul. So that was very challenging. GP is taking hits from your members initially, but then as years went by, I know we had Prince William, Virginia wrote a resolution a couple conferences ago to ban OSB burning, and things started coming into fruition here. And ultimately, we had the leader of that cadre who just retired and came down with very bad cancer. And we were later really thanked for what we did. We have showers, we have a lot of things in process, but getting beat up by your members for doing what's in their best interest sometimes, that's the tough one for me.
It is. It's a hard, you know, when you sign up in the union, right? You put your name on a ballot, they elect you, they put your faith in you. You don't, you know, you sign up to fight the mayor or the outside forces, and it's your love for the soldiers on this side of the gate that drives you to do it. So when your own soldiers are coming at you, it's hard. But that's leadership, right? I mean, if you just do doing the right thing isn't always the popular thing. And not doing the right thing has consequences eventually. And the challenge that we all have as people, and why you gotta have people around you, no matter who you are, right? You get to certain forks in the road and you're not sure what right is. And you gotta have mentors around you that you can bounce it off to say, like, okay, let's talk out what right is. And before you know it, the forest becomes, you mentioned Mike Mullane. Mike Mullane was one of, you know, the people in my life who, no matter what it was, whether it was my leadership as the local president, state president, or my personal life and the challenges that I had, just being a human being, I could run him by Mike Mullane, and he would always give me whatever the best advice he could for me. And having people like that in your life is a true treasure. It's a gift from God. It's God working through people. And remembering that when you get elected to office as a union president or a whatever, executive board member, sometimes the members are going to take some issue with what decisions and the direction you take the union in and your position in that. And I'll tell you, one of the things that was very, very polarizing, in not just in my local, but all in particular in cities where we had mandatory vaccinations, was COVID vaccines. And it was, and to this day, it's still contentious. We have members that are still on the street now that lost their jobs, which is wrong, you know? But as a union, we have so many tools in our toolbox, and legal is one of them. We can go to court, or we can fight it out in a court of public opinion. And in that particular fight, we were losing in all directions on both coasts and in both countries. We couldn't find a legal ground to stand on. We couldn't find the public opinion to where there was public opinion, we didn't have mandatory vaccinations. Let me put it that way. Where the public opinion was against us, the politicians did their polling. They knew what they can get away with. And in Boston, we actually had, we were unique because we actually had a side letter of agreement that said we could test or vax. And then a new mayor came in and violated the agreement. So we weren't arguing under the same legal premises we were all over the country. All other unions, not just IAFF, all over the place, unions were losing, arguing in courts over mandatory vaccination. In Boston, we argued in state court over collective bargaining. And we actually won We lost, we appealed, we won, they appealed, and ultimately lost. And what the court said was, it was a non-delegable right of the authority of the mayor, in our case, the mayor of Boston, that they can't sign it away. The previous mayor didn't have the authority to write an agreement with us, a side letter for Testavax. And what saved us was the fight we took on, the fact that we fought in the public space, we fought in the courtrooms, we fought wherever we had to fight to protect our members that didn't want to be vaccinated. With the caveat, of course, after we fought to make sure we were first in line to get vaccinations, that enough time had passed in this particular pandemic, enough of us, it became, the immunities were built up enough that didn't rise to the level of a public safety issue that the mayor was willing to come off of the position of mandatory vaccinations, and it kind of went away. And so we were lucky, we didn't get anybody fired, but my point is, it was a polarizing time. It was a very difficult time to be a union leader because the fight wasn't outside the gate. The fight wasn't necessarily the enemy you signed up to fight. It wasn't foreign, it was domestic. It was our own brothers and sisters that were blaming us because we couldn't solve their problem. And not every one of these problems does the union have the magic sauce to navigate, and it's tough, man. And it cost a lot we watched it across the IAFF. A lot of local presidents said, you know what, I did my time, thanks, good luck everybody, you can have it. And it was enough to drive a lot of guys out. But at the end of the day, the mission of the IAFF, the reason why 100 plus years ago they all banded together was that we need a voice. And a union is never going to be perfect. I always say it doesn't matter what union you're talking about. The Union of the United States, the Union of the IAFF, the Union of the pipe fitters, the Union of the electrical, the Union of a marriage. Nothing's truly perfect. They're always going to have trials and tribulations. But the foundation and precipice that created what is this IAFF today, us, still remains. We still have a job where if we don't have a voice, we get killed needlessly, and that's not acceptable. We can do better, notwithstanding the friction that comes with trying to hold unity together. When there's a bevy of competing issues that us as individuals hold in different priority and think should be the priority. But that's why we have democracy. It's why we have a constitution. It's why we have bylaws. So we have rules to hold us together and process through the difficulties that inevitably arise that pull us apart. Tell me a little bit about this one, Frankie. What would you say transitioning into the, I get it because I had the similar path, right? Start out as a union rep, on the board, see some things that you think you got to fix, can't get them done as a board member, you got to run and try to be in a position that gives you the constitutional authority to affect the change you see needs. You move up to the city president, you serve on the state board doing the lobbying, where you know that those state and provincial houses control a lot of what impacts us as public employees and as firefighters is controlled by the voting bodies and the governors and premiers and the state and provincial houses. What about moving up to the IAFF? Talk a little bit about your role as a DVP and transitioning to GST.
Yeah, it's funny. Before I answer that, when you brought up Mullane, there was a picture that came up, and I glanced at it over your shoulder.
We're both fatter then, I noticed.
Yeah, and I don't know, 20 years ago, but I know our hair was dark,
There was less stress.
So it shows that as you move up in the leadership, union years are like dog years. 1 year is like 7 years of getting beat up. So that's reflect.
Like we've been in these positions for like 25 years. Then we counted it last night. It was like 25 months. We're not even in 3 years. I'm like, what?
So with the dog years, you know, comes pressure. You want to deliver for your members, and you know, in all the jobs I've ever had, you know, I was always like, I got to be the best apparatus operator in the city. I got to be the best fire. I got to be the best captain on this truck. Protect my members. Know my job. Boom. And same, I got to be the vice president. I got to do this for the president. I got bang. Okay, I'm the president. I'm the vice president of the state. Whatever. I'm the DVP. I got to bring unity to the biggest district that was just kind of, you know, the boats were just floating around in the harbor. Nobody, you know, there wasn't a lot of unity that I saw, and that's one of the things that I wanted to build was like a team and get us pulling in the right direction. And one of the things that I'll never forget is when we closed the doors up, I believe in Cincinnati convention, and had a roll call vote that District 3, the unity there, I mean, everybody was marching to the same drum. And there's a lot to be said about that. But I didn't really have, you know, as a DVP and all the other places, I've found that I got comfortable. There's always on-the-job training. You're not perfect on the day one, but you hit the floor running, and I've always felt that way. Now, as a GST, I'd never been a treasurer before. Technically, we're all fiduciaries and all that stuff, even the president, but as the treasurer, it came with a lot of, all right, I gotta get into this and dive into this and know my job and study and you know, do all, you know, that kind of stuff. And I found that it's the most challenging position that I've ever had when you're talking all the ranks that I've held in the fire department and then all the positions I've held in the union. And I like the challenge because, you know, we talk every day and, you know, I'm doing that kind of boring stuff. But if you're not a local that has your financial house in order, then you can't give the president and the legal department and the DVPs the tools to fight. So that was my main, you know, kind of commitment is come in, look at it, and I'll just randomly pick one thing was, you know, our pension system. We had some issues with it, some funding, and, you know, we had pension loans and obligations and liabilities that we had on the books, and I talked to you, and it's like, hey, what do you think we bring some type of reform to the board and see what the plan administrators want to do with it? And we studied it, looked at it, brought it as a board, brought it to the board, kind of got some shots back at us and why we want to reform this, and so we try to get it right. At the end of the day, I think we got it right. We had the board support, and we put together a package that over the next 25 to 30 years, we're going to be saving $75 million in IAFF dues. We still kept the plan in a non-contributory manner for our employees. No, they didn't get taken out at the knees, but it was fair and it was right, and it was tough, but we did it.
It's hard to, you know, wasn't that long ago we were taking out loans to pay the pension obligation, and through the whole board working together, we've been able to kind of get this thing in a good direction relatively. And again, we've been in office less than 3 years. I was shocked last night when we did the math. But we've come a long way in a short period of time, and it's because we've done the hard right thing, you know? So we're talking about, like, okay, this is a leadership conference, right? So how do you teach leadership? Well, you can get up and, you know, there's people that are phenomenal leadership teachers. But a lot of times, leadership for us as IAFF affiliate leaders is looking at some local that had a fight that's easily translatable, can happen in your local, and talk a little bit about how they navigated those battles. And we said, yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be a good way to do it. We said, you know what? Well, you come to think of it, like if that local president or whatever position they're in did such a good job, let's recognize them. Let's give them an award or something, you know? I mean, you go to a fire, you can be the biggest jerk in the world, but you can screw up at every other fire in your career. Do one good act, they give you the top medal, you know? Let's give them something to recognize them. And we said, well, what we call it? you know, we're like, I don't know, the president, secretary, treasurer award. Like, well, there's a bunch of, there's a lot of president, secretary, treasurers. So we're like, well, what do you do? So we called it the General's Award, because we're General Secretary Treasurer, General President. That's the only, in this constitution of the IAFF, it's the only two that are recognized as general. So we called it the General's Award for excellence in leadership. And we're going to bring up some of our local leaders that have had tough battles and had to navigate those battles and showed excellence in leadership. And we'd like to bring up first and foremost from our two Baltimore locals, Local 964 of the Baltimore Fire Officers, Josh Fannin, President Josh Fannin, and from the firefighters, Matt Costa, Local 734. Come on up, gentlemen. Good job. Good job, buddy. So let me tell you that in Baltimore, they had some difficult challenges. Thanks, brother. Thanks, Matty. So in Baltimore, they had some very difficult challenges.
Toes on this. Yeah.
They had a difficult two fires that resulted in multiple line of duty deaths. And it's something that you hope never happens on your watch, but unfortunately, in the business we're in, it happens. And when it does, and I've had this experience several times in my career, it's like getting hit with a deck gun. It's hard to hold on. And we asked Josh and Matt to come up and give us a little bit about their experience. So I'll start it off asking, tell us a little bit about how you were first notified of the line of duty death where we lost 3 of our members.
So that was the first day of this conference, was the 2nd year anniversary where we went down to Stricker Street and recognized a candlelight vigil. But I was first made aware a little bit after 6 a.m., January 2nd, 2022. The chief of the fire department called me, said that we had a fire going on down in West Baltimore. There was a major collapse. We had multiple firefighters trapped, and, quote, "it doesn't look good." And I just said I was on my way, met him down there. I had on my suit like I always did when I came to work, but I'm a battalion chief too. I threw my gear on and got in there, started trying to help out, digging for the, at that point, we had one who still hadn't been recovered. It took about 8 hours to get him out, but I think on the way down there, I don't remember this part exactly, but I was definitely in communication very early with our district vice president, Andrew Pantelis, and our state president, Jeff Buttle, and those guys came out right away. And actually, one of the things I was thinking about this too was you two guys were there within a few hours. If you remember, we showed up the next day at Truck 23 where Lieutenant Paul Buttram was assigned, and he was killed. Captain Whitehead assembled all the men on the floor, said, "GP, thank you very much for coming all this way." And you said, "Well, I'm just coming from Boston. Frank over here, he's got to come from LA.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, you guys beat our fire chief here."
Yeah.
Which was a sobering reality that definitely. One of the things I guess that we realized kind of right away, I guess it is an instinct to deal with the 3, was we kind of focused on the families, the next of kin, making sure that they had everything they needed, establishing family liaisons to coordinate everything. And then it was really thinking about the mental health of all of our firefighters. We really had to go around and do those tours and try to be everywhere just to keep everybody's mental health up, keep them from breaking, bend not break, you know.
Yeah. Matty, walk us through the fire you had shortly there, you know, not too long ago.
Yeah, with Linden Heights, it was, I was, squirrely. I was listening to the radio and actually heard the Mayday come out, ran out of the office, and on my way there, the first call I made was communications, and that was to get the SISM team activated. My next call was to the chief of the fire department to kind of get a game plan on what we were going to do. I think the third call was to President Fannin to kind of figure out what we were going to do when we finally got together. And then the fourth call was to District, Pantelis, District Vice President Andy Pantelis, to try to get everything started with peer support and the IAFF team to go with Christy Garrett and Mike Wells. And then we got to the scene and realized it wasn't good for Josh and I, and you know, we just went from there.
I know we deployed IAFF personnel up to assist you guys. Tell us a little bit about how the IAFF helped.
There was actually a lot of different aspects to assistance from the IAFF. I know when I took over as our local president in January of 21, which was a year before Stricker Street, we wouldn't have known that. And Matt talked about Christy Garrett, who's one of our members who's always been really passionate since the beginning of the peer support model. And I took a look at, we had a joint peer support team. I called Christy and I said, hey, what's going on with this peer support team? And she said, well, I'm kind of busy right now. I didn't really have the resources and support. And I said, well, I'm here now, and you know, you got anything you need, money, training, whatever. We talked to our state president, our district vice president. There was a really robust team down in PG County, Prince George's, which is a little few miles south of us, and we coordinated together with them. So we made sure to have a robust peer support response to that incident to try to make sure that everybody's mental health was good. But another thing is, I mean, the funeral, as large scale as this event is, the funeral for that, I think we had 15,000 people in attendance, and I can't think of anybody who could plan an event like that any better than AGP Lynch, Erin Lynch. She's a godsend, always coming out there to help us with those kind of planning.
Whoever she is. Erin, take a bow, will ya? Where's Erin?
I call her an angel on my shoulders. I've had to work closely with her like 2 more times than I ever wanted to. But coordinating the logistics, the peer support teams, any supplies we need, any guidance on anything. I mean, and we're also, I know it's not like this necessarily everywhere, but we're very tight-knit in Maryland. All the local presidents, we're in constant contact with each other, and we're not the only ones that had line of duty deaths in the last couple of years, and we're just always there right at each other's side as soon as, right away.
And as we wrap it up, we got a lot of, it's an incredible story. The IAFF deploys, you know, on multiple line of duty deaths. What type of advice can one of you offer to the crowd about what do you do in that situation? You're faced with, you're overwhelmed with multiple deaths.
Yeah, you're going to be definitely overwhelmed. Definitely use your resources with the DVPs and the IAFF, because you got to balance, you know, between Josh and I, we had like a bromance going on, what our wives would say, because we were on the phone so much. And it just makes it a lot easier when you're overwhelmed with the media, with the families, with the members, and you still have to run a labor union with all that going on. So you can't forget the day-to-day stuff that we have to do, and then you just gotta keep those resources available.
I feel like my best advice too is proactivity. That kind of goes with anything, but I think especially a local president, but also people on the executive board, to just have forward thinking and plan out ahead and kind of have strategic plans for different things, because you just plan for every contingency, and then it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when it happens, we're ready for it, and we know how we're going to respond. And we're not going to know everything to do along the way, but we can make adjustments, and it's a lot better than trying to figure it out when it happens.
Well, thank you guys for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank
you so much, Josh. Good job, Maddie.
Thank you.
So if you want to affect change, right, sometimes you got to speak truth to power. Sometimes you got to take on the powers that be, and when you do that, they flex on you, and you take some hits. I'd like to bring up Adam Casillas, president of the Duluth, Minnesota Local 101, one of our early on locals, who took on the incumbent mayor of Duluth, who was really devastating the fire department. Adam, come on up. What's up, brother? Good to see you. Thanks for being here, Adam.
Thank you, sir.
Tell us a little bit about what started you down the road of you guys taking on that mayor.
Yeah, give you a little background. Duluth, Minnesota, about 90,000 population, 8 stations, 10 rigs. 3 of those rigs only have 3 people on them. 1 of them has 2 people on it. So we had a mayor in place for 8 years. As of November, we took down the political machine of the state DFL, local DFL, and the AFL-CIO and had her removed. Our little local of 132 members took her out. We needed to change. In her 8 years, every year she proposed a budget cut or a staffing cut to the fire department. She was strategically coming after us, and we had to make a stop. Thankfully to the IAFF, every year we have an MFA run, and we had just recently had a GIS study done. So we were able to every year stop her and get the council to vote against her budget. But it was a fight. And then, yeah, recently we had to get rid of her. So, strong pack.
That's it. Well, not every local can get an MFA and a GIS every year. But if they're closing your firehouse, you can. If they're closing your companies, you can. If you're running unsafe, we're going to fight. And a GIS study, I forget what that stands for, but it's Geographical Information Service, I don't even know, something like that. It basically decides what your response times are, for those of you that don't know. It can calculate where your fire stations are, what your staffing levels are, and how long it takes to get to a particular incident. And your MFAs is a municipal financial audit. So when the city comes out and says, yeah, we're out of money, they say that every contract. But when you do a municipal financial audit, we can do a deeper dive and see what they're actually spending their money on. So that's important for what we do, you know? And that, of course, you have to have facts on your side, right? The more we're equipped with facts, the more successful we'll be in ultimately selling the public on why we're right, which obviously you guys did because you took the mayor out.
Yeah, we crushed her. Yeah, she not only took on the fire department, but she decided to take on all city employees. 2021, she decided she was going to significantly reduce our health benefits. She stood on the steps of City Hall and announced that she was reducing our health insurance. I had counsel with her, and within minutes, I had a team standing behind me saying that we were going to do our own press release on City Hall. And on the 29th, we were able to have our own press conference with all city employees and hundreds of retirees standing behind us.
When we fight, we win. So if you had a piece of advice for the members here, what would it be?
You guys have said it, so I'll reiterate some of it. First, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Second is, where was I going with it? Anyways,
politics.
We'll do the third one.
Politics.
Pack.
Money.
With
pack.
a strong pack and a few pissed off firefighters, you can do anything.
Right on. Adam, thanks, brother. Appreciate
Adam,
it.
thank you. Appreciate you.
All right, next up, we don't know part of our job is to make sure that when our members get hurt, when our members get sick from job-related issues, we can protect them. We can protect their families. They have the benefits in place that we don't lose our homes, that our families don't suffer from our service. And one of those, obviously, which is plaguing our membership, is cancer. In leading the way in that fight for benefits for our members diagnosed with cancer is our Saskatchewan Provincial Association, led by Lloyd Zwack, the president of their executive board and their union, which now has the most cancers covered in all of Canada, more than what we were able to do with Congress when we passed the cancer presumption for our federal firefighters. They have 22 cancers covered in Saskatchewan, leading the way. So Lloyd, come on up and give us a little insight.
Good job.
What's up, brother? What's up, brother? Tell us a little about the journey.
Obviously, it has been a tremendous journey over the years, and it's not about one person. I was just lucky enough to be in the position I was in when we were able to get this legislation. Every one of us here, we continue to leapfrog off each other, and I'm just, it's been a very, very interesting approach, because if you don't know the politics in Canada, you guys, Republican, Democrat, we have a very, very right-wing government in Saskatchewan that absolutely has no appetite for labor. You know, we are a necessary evil, and it's through this, the lobbying, all that work that we all do every single year. It's through that work that enabled us to get where we are with that government. And another interesting fact, the brother there from Duluth, Our province makes it mandatory that every firefighter contribute to PAC to at least $25 a year. Everybody. So this is not an option. And that's how we work.
Well, first off, it's a great lesson in the fact that you have a very right-wing government historically that doesn't like labor, but you guys have been able to be successful, again, living up to our ethos that we support those that support us. We're here to protect firefighters and their families. You want to be on that side, we're with you. And that's been successful. Tell them a little bit about what I found interesting. You know, we have Republicans and Democrats. How many parties do you have in Canada?
Yeah, so provincially in Saskatchewan, we have right now 7 different parties. And yeah, it's quite a challenge, you know, and I'm not trying to be smart or anything, but we have a party called, you know, the Rhinoceros Party. And, you know, trying to deal with these people is quite a challenge.
Are there a lot of rhinoceroses up there?
That is true.
So it's interesting, but hey, good for you guys. And so if a party, there's 7 parties, if someone doesn't have the majority, then they have to negotiate and kind of like make trades with the other parties in order to get to a majority, in order to be like the heads of that legislative body.
So in Saskatchewan, I think to form a majority government, you need, I want to say, 34 elected officials. And you can do that 2 parties coming together, much like our coalition federal government that we see. Right. It's 2 parties that are actually in power.
It kind of forces them to compromise on issues. They have to come to the middle or move off their position in order to create that majority to gain the leadership positions.
That's right.
In the legislature. Yeah, interesting. Very good. Well, listen, you've been around a long time. Other than advice on hockey fights, what would you tell the crowd?
You know, and everybody absolutely knows this. I don't have to go to the well one more time. Stay informed. Take every opportunity you can to get education, like we are this week. And know your facts. And the IAFF has a tremendous resource on this cancer legislation. And, you know, you support us, and that's.
We're all in it together. We are us. Without each other, there is no us, and without us, we get decimated. We're on the table. We're on the menu, rather, instead of being at the table. So thanks for being here, Lloyd. Appreciate it, brother. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Up next on the hit list, we have the president of Salem, Oregon, Local 314, another old local number 314, Matt Brozovich. They had a particularly tough fight up there when they came after one of our widows, and we're going to have him come up and talk a little bit about it. But you know what? We'll show the video that we did for the city council. My name is Edward Kelly, and I'm honored to be serving as the General President of the International Association of Firefighters, and I'm at the base of the Freedom Tower at Ground Zero in New York City. On this very day, the 343rd FDNY member succumbed to World Trade Center-related illness. That's 343 brave people who gave their lives in service to their community, just like Mo Stadelli did for the people of Salem. It's disgusting to me that the Salem City Council, on the very day that Mo's wife Tina was in Colorado Springs, as her husband's name was etched into the memorial wall of the IAFF, notified her that they would be appealing the decision that rightfully awarded her a pension, given Mo's sacrifice for the people of Salem. It was 2009 when 88 of 90 legislators in Oregon passed a law that protected firefighters who succumbed to job-related cancer. It disgusts me that the Salem City Council decided to appeal that decision and try to rob Tina of the pension that Mo sacrificed his life for. Isn't that the least the people of Salem owe it to her for the loss of her husband? I can tell you this, the IAFF will never rest until Tina gets what she deserves. We stand right behind you, Tina. We love you. God bless you. And I ask the Salem City Council, do what's right. Lawyers were not elected to make the decisions in that city. You were. Stand up and lead and do the right thing. So that came from Big Mike Fournier, DVP of the 9th, called me up that day and said, hey, you gotta do a video. We're getting, blah, 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 blah. We got this meeting tonight. And I happened to be in New York for the Tunnel to Towers dinner. And it just so happened, obviously you saw it on the video, like that was the day that we lost our 343rd FDNY member. And it was like, for me, a God shot. So tell us a little bit about this whole journey that you guys went through, Maddie.
It's not, I guess, just our journey, but really his spouse's, and that's really what we kind of kept going back to. This issue started in 2018. Mo came down with cancer, tonsillar cancer, and it was tied to HPV, which 90% of all men have in America. And he came down with cancer. We tried to get him to retire so he would get his death benefits. He would not retire. He loved the job. He beat cancer. He came back to work in early 2019. Quickly got cancer again, came out of remission. They made him actually come off the job. He had a large growth on his throat that he could no longer talk on the radio, so it became a safety issue if he should be at work or not be at work. They sent him home, and he passed away within a couple weeks. We were not able to get him retired on time, unfortunately, and so the city, we thought they had bought off on that it was job-related cancer. As soon as he passed away, they started fighting us all the way through the appellate court. In December of last year, they had awarded Tina the full benefit. We contacted the IAFF, DVP Fournier, and let him know that we did have a line of duty death and that it would count through the state of Oregon. And it was silent from the city, so we thought we were past that. As we came back to Colorado Springs, we got notified from our workers' comp attorney that the city had appealed this to the Oregon Supreme Court, and they were going to take this case and his wife in front of the Oregon Supreme Court, saying that this was not a death benefit that should be awarded to firefighters. And it couldn't have happened at a worse time. His wife's back there putting his name on the wall, and it was a pretty moving situation. So that's where we got DVP Fournier involved, our state and local legislators. We didn't have a friendly city council. We still don't at this point, but we let them know that we weren't going to tolerate this. We weren't going to stand idle as they attacked one of our widows.
Right on. I mean, hey, that's, you want to pick a fight with us, peekaboo, here we are.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, I know Frankie's been through a lot of fights like this where we've had to come in and stand up for the benefits.
We've had, and these are, if we're going to do one thing, like Ed said in the video, we're not going to rest. I mean, these are the kind of things that should energize.
Fucking right.
That should energize you as a leader when your members and their family and their kids and their wives are being screwed over. So Matt, what type of advice would you offer, you know, any of these union leaders from Canada and the United States if they're in a similar situation?
Notify your DVP early and often, keep them in the loop, and it's all about relationships. And we talk about the political relationships, building those early, but it's also the local ones. State presidents within your state associations, your comms teams, having those relationships, being able to pick up the phone and forging those relationships wherever at events like this. This is what it's about. And
right
then
on.
obviously, like we talked about with the PAC today, it's all about the PAC. But you still need to have the members on the streets. Within a few days, we had over 400 firefighters at our headquarters station to picket that city council meeting, which might not sound like a lot here, but that's about 10% of Oregon firefighters were there in a few short days saying, absolutely not. You're not going to do this to one of our widows.
Yep. Well, hey,
Hey,
keep up the fight.
hey, thank you, sir.
You know, when we fight, we win. We gotta,
Proud of you. Yeah.
When we're right, we fight, and when we fight, we win. I'd now like to bring up Alexandra Yonka, president of Local 1375 in Hollywood, Florida, not to be confused with the Hills, who they've had some tough battles down there, and she's going to tell us a little bit about the fights they've had. Welcome up, Scrapper.
How are you?
All right, so tell us a little bit about the journey down in Hollywood.
So just to give you a little bit backstory on everything, I got hired about 15 years ago working through this department. We went through financial urgency. Fast forward 10, 12 years later, we spent years fighting back for our benefits, tooth and nail, full pension restoration, full benefits returned. This past few years, we've been gearing up for our next negotiations process. We finally were like, we're gonna get a break. We're moving forward, we're past financial urgency. We started the dialogue with our membership, and eventually we got wind that there was a lot of anti-union rhetoric out there by our managerial employees. We had a discussion at the time. I was the vice president of our union, and I spoke with President Chuck Tullio, and we called a labor management meeting to directly talk to our management. We were very stern with our response. Let them know that any union bashing, anti-union rhetoric was absolutely unacceptable. Some of the things that were being said is, I don't know what you pay union dues for. Why do you guys stay in the union? And we were very, very stern with this response.
Excuse me.
We completed our meeting, and an anonymous letter came out very shortly after this. And this is where the kind of subject gets a little bit touchy. It is a complaint, a harassment complaint against our president of our union, directly towards oppressive and abusive behavior towards females. I remember talking to Chuck about this, and I was kind of scratching my head. I know I'm not the girliest of girls, but aren't you mentoring me, and I'm being groomed by you to step into your position? So I was caught off guard by all of this, and we immediately called Walt Dix. We filed an unfair labor practice, and we moved forward with a grievance procedure. We spent a lot of time fighting with the city over this. All of our members were called in. We had about approximately 50 members called in. The investigation, everything was found basically unfounded. And
it speaks volumes about speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
You know, there's the weaponization of victimhood and trying to like put things on people and cancel them and try to paint them in a light that's just not true. And it's one of those spots where when we as union leaders, when you take that step forward to speak truth to that power, there's a very high possibility they're gonna come after you. And if we allow our leaders to be taken out that way, then we will never have a voice. And if we don't have a voice, it puts us right in front of those churches again. And you know what? I can accept getting killed on this job if it's my day to die because it's what I signed up for. But I don't want to get killed because they were saving money. I don't want to get killed because they didn't train me. I don't want to get killed because they were poorly managing us. That's wrong. And that's where if we don't have a voice, that's what happens. And, you know, in Hollywood, for those of you that never had the pleasure of meeting Chuck Tullio, believe me, you want him in your foxhole. And let me tell you, for those of you that haven't met Alexandra yet, you want her in your foxhole. And they didn't know what they were in for with these guys and gals down there in Hollywood, and put on a tremendous fight, you know. And we're proud of you, and we're proud to stand with you and by you and show us what leadership is. Show us what excellence looks like in leadership. So thank you.
Hey, Alex, so as you wrap it up, very well said, GP. You guys have been in a fight, and what was the nickname that we gave you?
Scrappy.
Scrappy. You know, and Scrappy comes from like that image of like a junkyard dog fighting in an alley. That's Alex right here. So Alex, you give one last advice. If anybody in one of our union leaders is in a position like you with the Union 101 busing, you know, tell them what the IAFF did.
First off, don't put up with any shit from people.
Woo!
Secondly, take your time here at ALTS. Really spend your time networking with other people. Talk to others about their experiences. Utilize this time. This is part of your toolbox. Go to the classes. There's some amazing, valuable information, and really learn about the resources that are out there. The IAFF took this on as a guardianship case. It provided us with a lot of legal support. It also provided us with a lot of financial support to be able to fight these individuals during this time. So take your time here and really network, take the classes, and take some stuff back to your other local unions.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for being here. Awesome job, really great. Great job. Would now like to bring up Chris Ross, the president of Montreal Local 125, another one of our low-number locals going back probably north of 100 years. And he's going to tell a little story about how the birth of a national movement to address firefighter cancer. President Ross, come on up. Monsieur.
How you doing, Paul?
Hey, how'd you like that anthem in French, huh? That was beautiful.
C'était excellent. Là. Je suis vraiment content d'être là, puis vraiment content de l'avoir.
I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say the same thing. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about how we got C-244 up and become law.
Well, you know, this really comes down to what you say, GP, about, you know, rewarding those that go for us and protect us. It's really about those networks that we establish as well. My friend Sherry Romanato, we went to high school together. My local deputy, not someone we were involved with a lot because I live outside of the territory of Montreal, but we really had a fortunate exchange during the legislative conference where we established those networks. And she reaches out to me in December 2021, a quick little phone call, and she says, Chris, I've been selected for a private member's bill. And she says, I want to do something for firefighters.
Tell them about a private member's. It's another unique part of Canada, how their government works.
So, you know, laws are usually established by the government that's sitting, and they also have a policy in Canada that every single one of the 338 deputies, they pull a number at the start of each session, and that number puts your rank of the possibility of bringing up your own individual legislation. And with 338 members of the House of Commons, well, you need to be really low down. If you're not in the first couple of numbers that are pulled, you have very little hope of you having an opportunity to file that legislation. And Sherry pulled a low number that year, and you know, most deputies look for how do I help my community? How do I influence my community? How do I do something that'll get me votes? And Sherry, on the 6th of December 2021, she calls and she says, no, I want to do something for firefighters. She says, you know, we spent a lot of time talking, and she said, I've heard about cancers, and you know, my dad was a firefighter, and my husband was a firefighter, and she said, I'm going to do this to help you guys.
We kind of hit the lottery in more ways than one. Not only did she have a number picked out, she cared enough to put what's in her self-interest behind what's in our greater interest. And so she comes up, she files a bill, and now we have to do a real lobbying effort all across the country to make it a reality.
Yeah, I mean, this is the private member's bill, is you have to get that adopted before an election comes up. And in Canada, the Liberal government right now is a minority government, so they're basically surviving based on partnerships. And this is, you know, where the force of the international came together and pushing across Canada throughout all of those political parties, you know, how do we get this done as quick as possible? How do we move it up on the agenda? How do we exchange our spot with someone else? And in as little as 18 months, we went from that phone call in December 2021 to June of 2023, gone through the House of Commons, gone to the Senate, came back, royal assent, the law's adopted.
So think about that, 18 months. 18 months to pass a law. If you're new in the group, you probably think that's a long time. But if you work in a provincial or state house lobbying for the firefighters or anybody else, you know that that's lightning speed. And now tell us a little bit about what that law does for us. What's it going to do? How's it going to change the life of, realistically, the next generation of firefighters?
We talk a lot about recognizing cancer, and you know, some poignant stories that came up in the great work by Lord in Saskatchewan. But what C-224 is going to do is establish a national framework where we're going to work on data collection, and we're going to work on research. We're going to try to find ways, or how are we going to prevent cancer? You know, ultimately, it's nice to compensate those that have been injured, but what we really want is that no one's going to get out there and get hurt. You know, that's what the base of the fire service is, prevention.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we call it PSOB, you guys call it PSOC bill, right? The death benefit that we have, it's a great benefit, but you can keep it. I don't want it. Thank you very much. And that's what C224 is trying to do, is let's get this next generation of firefighters, reduce the number of cancers, the number of members that never get to retirement, never get to walk their kids down the aisle or be there for their grandchildren, be that grandmother that's doting on their
And I got to
grandchildren.
throw out there the contribution of FirePack, because it's not without obstacles. When we started the first reading that law in January 2022, the local government in Quebec, and we have that odd system in Canada that Lloyd talked about. We have a federal party that only runs candidates in one province. And that province is pretty strong in voting for those candidates, so they've even made the opposition at sometimes, even though they only have candidates in one of the 9 provinces and territories across Canada. They came out in first reading and said, not going to support it, like firefighters, but this is a provincial responsibility, health, and we're not going to go forward on it. And we came in hard on them, and I spoke with GP Kelly. We got some FirePack financing. We threw up rapidly a website, manually entered every single postal code across Canada, so you could log into the website, put your postal code, it would generate a letter supporting firefighters, fire it off to the representative, and within a couple of days, the leader of that federal party, the Bloc Québécois, his assistant calls me, and they've never spoken to us before. They don't answer our emails, they don't call us back, they don't come to the Ledge conference, and suddenly the leader of the party says, we need to sit down and talk about this. So we sat down, talked about it, and he said, we're going to find common ground, we're going to work on it. And at the end of the meeting, he never really mentioned the email campaign, but he says, your members, they leaned on a button somewhere. He said, I'm hoping that you'll transmit the message to them that we're going to support you, and they'll take the finger off the button. I think that's a demonstration of the power of FirePack and the demonstration of going farther together than going quicker alone.
Can't sweet talk them, headlock.
All right.
Awesome. Good job.
Thanks, Chris.
Chris, any one thing you want to throw? You're a seasoned veteran leading a big union in the international. What would you tell someone walking through the doors as a union leader?
Don't give up. 30 years on the job there. I've got less years left than I've put in, but every single project I've brought up in Quebec, from presumptive cancer to negotiating, there's always been someone, if not many people, that said, Chris, you're never going to get it. You're dreaming in color. Persevere, do it, because everything I put my head to, I've gotten.
Right for your leadership. That's a great lesson.
All right.
That's a great lesson. Now I'd like to bring up Ben Carter, the president of Mountain View, Colorado, who was terminated for standing up and fighting. Put his own family has suffered because of his union leadership. Ben, come on up here.
Appreciate you, brother.
Tell us a little bit about Mountain View. Tell us about what you stood up for and how they reacted.
So I became a fireman at 19. It's the only career I've ever known. My local's got 152 members. I became a member of the E-Board about a decade ago, and almost immediately I became the hammer for my department. Just vicious defense of our contract, defense of our members, and that didn't endear me to our department leadership, as you can imagine. In the fall of 22, we had some pretty rough negotiations that I was in charge of. And then in January of 23, my membership elected me to be president of our local. Within a few short months, I think I filed 4 or 5 contract grievances, making it pretty clear to management that I was not elected to be their golfing buddy. Following one of those meetings, contract grievance meetings, is February 9th of 23, I got a call about an hour later from one of our deputy chiefs saying I was being placed on leave. And I said, why? And he said, I'm not quite sure. Call HR. I didn't call HR. I called DVP Mike Frenier, and then I called CPFF President Dave Foster. I said, hey, I'm not sure what they're doing, but I'm pretty sure they're going to fire me. So what do I need to do? From there, the next month, there was an internal investigation without any due process whatsoever. And on March 21st, I was terminated. The next day, I filled out a guardian application, and I was quickly accepted for that. I tell you, there's nothing like opening that email, that letter from the GP Kelly. It's just this huge weight lifted off your shoulders. You know you're going to be okay, because you got 340,000 members that got your back. The full weight of the IAFF comes down on your fire department, and there's consequences for that. So, you know, after that, I applied for the Justice Fund, which a lot of you probably haven't heard about. What it is if you lose your job in the service of the membership, the IAFF will provide funds, you know, and it's been huge, you know, to be able to pay my health insurance for my small children and my mortgage and everything. It goes a long way, and yeah, that's about it. It's the federal lawsuits are not the quickest, but.
Well, we're going to get there, you know, and tell us a little bit what you're doing now. Tell us about your family.
Yeah, I mean, something you don't think about, you know, is the impact it has on your family, your wife, your kids, of you know, of losing the only career you ever had. And you know, like after a while, we were hoping for the best, and it would get resolved quickly, and it didn't quite, you know. And then, you know, my 6-year-old asked me, like, you know, Daddy, why aren't you going to the firehouse? And then you have to explain that you don't get to go to the firehouse for a little bit because your chief's a really bad person, and you stuck up for your friends, and that's what happens sometimes. Someone's got to pay the freight. So, but if there's anything I want to leave everyone in the room who probably already knows this is, you know, in order when you take the oath, when you step up to serve your members, you have to put them first, in front of yourself, in front of your own interests, in front of your own family, everything. You have to put them and their families first, you know, or else you can't do this job. But I tell you this, if the worst happens, the IAFF has your back. You know, the IAFF has some of the best labor attorneys in the country. You know, Peter Leff, Art Trainer, you know, Jamie Eisner. They have fought for me like I was a member of their family. And they will fight for you. So do your job, all right? Fight for your members.
Amen. Right on. Thanks, brother. That was awesome. That was awesome.
Let me say one thing.
Go ahead.
And just really quickly, you know, I'm on my per capita mind going. 53 cents of your dues goes towards our emergency disputes fund, which funds our guardian policy. So you might all pay that, but that's for the ability to have a 120-person local be able to fund a 6-figure fight. So thanks for stepping up to the plate with your emergency disputes funds. That's what it's for.
When your members say at the kitchen table, what do we pay the IAFF for? What do they do for us? Remember that if it's your family out in the wind, you're going to want that EDF fund helping you. So we have our next speaker is Barbara Sellers. Now, many of you know Barbara because she wears a lot of hats around here. She's on the Elected Human Relations Committee. She serves on the EMS Committee. She does service rep work, representing locals. She stood up at a million different events for us. But first and foremost, she's the president of Shreveport, Louisiana, Local 514. And 514, like every other local, has its issues. And she had a particularly challenging situation down there that we want to bring her up to tell us so we can all learn a little bit about leadership and how she fought this battle along with her local. Come on up, Barbara.
Congratulations, Barbara.
How you doing, pal? Tell us a little bit about what's going on down in Shreveport.
So Fire Station 20, all of us want to come to work and know that our firehouse is safe. And about May of last year, I received a call from one of the members that had identified a group that had worked previously at Station 20 that had been either diagnosed with cancer, who was deceased from cancer, or who had separated and had received a diagnosis. So we got to work. The first call was to DVP Todd, And we laid it out, said, here's what's going on. He paved the way for us to get the resources that we needed. We knew that we were going to be in for a big fight. We had 3 major issues facing us. Fire Station 20 backs up to a water treatment plant, and we know that there's been 16 documented spills there. It also sits on an old rail yard, so we know that there's going to be a boneyard facet to that that's going to bring in some potential contaminants. And then there's a Superfund site and a landfill that was in that area. All of this came after this concern was leveraged. We got deep into the weeds. We started educating ourselves about the property. We immediately met with the IAFF team of experts that was assembled with Pat Morrison, Peter Leff, Raquel, Neil, Dr. Wu, Ryan Hefferman. Everybody was mobilized for us to be able to leverage exactly what needed to occur, and that was shut down Station 20 and relocate those crews to a safe environment so that the appropriate testing could take place, not only inside the structure, which was going to identify many types of molds, funguses, but also to do the soil testing and water testing necessary to restore the confidence at the appropriate time once we have that green light for those crews to return back to the grounds and to resume serving from that location if the results show that and substantiate that. None of this could have happened without the IAFF. And I will tell you, when Peter Leff sent the letter that was very direct about the expectation from the IAFF about closing down that station, when the CAO and the city council member that was on the site to tour the station was there, and when that email came across, they opened it up. The CAO said, that's from the union, and the council member said, no, that's from the IAFF. That's from Washington. Yeah. 24 hours later, the station was closed.
Well, one thing we've learned is that we can't rely on the city or the county or anybody else to tell us what scientifically is right or wrong. We need our own environmental hygienists, and we need our own people to do our own testing, so we can't trust anybody's word for it, you know, unless we're paying for it. So that's a great lesson for us. What else would you tell? I mean, you have a wealth of knowledge in that head. What would you impart to the audience?
Well, I will tell you that the IAFF, through Fighting Back campaigns, provided our own industrial hygienists to not only review the results and to make recommendations. We would not have had those results without Peter Leff telling the city what that expectation would be from our end. But what I would tell each of you, this was pretty big. This was something that we didn't have a playbook for, and the immediate call to DVP Todd put me at ease to know that the appropriate resources would be at our access for our members. And so whenever you are faced with something that seems bigger than the imaginable possibility, know that the IAFF stands ready to meet that challenge head on. My member that worked out at 20 that started this whole concern, he told me, he said, Barbara, my red sticker that's on my truck, that when I drive to work today and I look at it, I know that the IAFF knows that not only I am here in Shreveport, but they have my back.
Right on, right on. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Okay, would now like to bring up the president of one of our largest locals in the international, Chicago Local 2, who took over as president not too long ago, had some immediate challenges right off the bat, and we're going to bring him up to tell us a few words about his journey.
All right, Pat.
Pat, what's up, brother?
All right, good morning.
Pat Cleary, president of Chicago Local 2. Pat, what year did you get elected to the board?
Last May.
All right, last May as president.
Oh,
but
as president, yeah.
You were
2011, vice president.
And now moving up to president, even though you're sitting as vice and you're in the middle of a lot of stuff, it's a different job. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, you inherit a lot of issues. So I did inherit a lot of issues, and one of the issues pertained to our election and our bylaws being kind of antiquated. And some members' votes were not mailed in on time, so their votes didn't get counted. So I reached out to DVP Sanders. I reached out to our state association. I talked to my own executive board. I think that's one of the more important things to do is rely on your executive board and work together, and I have a very good executive board that I can rely on. So we all decided, yes, we needed to change our bylaws, and the membership wanted us to change the bylaws, and they made it very clear at our general membership meetings. So many of our members filed complaints, investigations for the international, and when I talked to DVP Sanders, I'm like, well, looks like we need to change our bylaws. And he's like, yeah, you do. So that's what we did, and that's what we're in the process of doing.
Yeah, which is, it's funny, when everything's running smooth, you're not really relying on your constitution and bylaws. It's when you have challenges, and particularly your internal challenges, right? Like the battle to maintain unity, you have to have a set of rules somewhere that you can rely on that keeps whoever happens to be in power in check and make sure that there's a fair and balanced approach, that we don't compromise the democracy in the union, the checks and balances in the union, and that we ultimately don't fracture the union. The Constitution is the bond that gives us the rule book that makes it fair. And Chicago Local 2 is a good example of time moves on, time marches on. There's places in our Constitution, the IAFF, that we realize when we read it, we come across it over an issue, go, wow, that's outdated. Whenever they wrote that, the world's changed since then. And same thing, I'm sure, if we went through my own local where I'm from, we'll go through and say, geez, man, that probably got to get changed somewhere. It's a good thing to review your Constitution and see if there's something that needs to be changed. And by the way, a lot of times you won't realize it needs to be changed till you're relying on that section because you have a problem.
Right, and we have our bylaws committee currently going over the entire bylaws. Our elections committee made recommendations. They've all passed. Now the bylaws committee is making changes as well, and we're going to reprint the bylaw book and have everything up to date, kind of like what we're doing with our building at Local 2. We're renovating that as well. But we did have other issues. We had many deaths in Chicago over the last 2 years, so a lot of the OSHA complaints came out and said that the city needs to improve training and health screenings. And we had done health screenings in the past, and you helped me out with the lung cancer screening. So I reached out once again, and I was informed of UDS about doing ultrasound scans and about Gallery doing the blood test. So we're going to do that next, and we have the funding to do it. And then the training, we've used the hazmat training from the International. We also recently had them come out to teach mental health to our retirees, active, and our exempt ranks. And now we're going to bring the fireground survival to Chicago.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny you mentioned fireground survival. The night before last, Sudbury, Ontario, one of our locals, there's a video of it. I don't know if anyone's caught it, but it's pretty powerful. They got like a 2.5-story wood frame, heavy smoke showing, they're making a push. And whatever happened, whether it was propane, natural gas, or some other phenomena, that building exploded into splinters. And one of the firefighters that they dug out of there said, IAFF fireground survival training saved his life. That was his quote. That's within the last 48 hours. So it's a powerful program that's saving lives, and I credit all the FGS, those that created it and those that teach it now. You're saving lives. So thank you.
Yeah, hey Pat, one last thing before we wrap up. I know that actually coming from Boston, Los Angeles, Chicago, one of the bigger locals in the internationals, tend to historically not use the international as much because, you know, they got their own resources and whatnot. So with the double line of duty death, with a lot of things, just what last advice can you give to our leaders? Say, you don't have to do it yourself. You got help from up above.
Right, get help from the international, talk to your DVP, use the resources that they have, which is what we're going to do now, and also rely on your own executive board. They'll lead you down the right path and help you out. One person can't run the union. You need help from the state association, the international, and your own executive board.
All right, thank you, Pat. Thank you for being here, brother. I'd now like to bring up Casey Yeager from IAFF Local I-66 in Renton, Washington, who actually represents, there's 3 different parts geographical parts in the country that this local represents. They are the Boeing Corporation's fire department. Just so you know, in the IAFF, thanks for coming, Case. In the IAFF, we have some what we call I-locals, industrial locals, private sector. And tell us a little bit about taking on, how many billions of dollars is Boeing worth?
I think about $130 billion.
So what's it like for a 200-member local to take on a $130 billion corporation?
Slightly intimidating, you could say. So it was rough from the get-go. I've been a president now for about 6 years, excuse me.
What do they pay you to be president? What's your president's stipend?
I get reimbursed for what I lose at work.
Oh, okay.
Time lost.
So nothing?
Nothing.
And the lawyer on the other side of the table, what roughly are they paying that lawyer?
Roughly $2 million.
So $2 million a year. Okay.
Yeah, so we cover Washington and Missouri, and we have other departments across in Philly, and they're I-17. Negotiations was kind of rough from the get-go. We had, I'd say, 9 people across the table, all probably making, I have no clue how much they make, but from the get-go, they were, I would say, I don't even know how to describe it. So it was
horrible human beings.
That's one word to describe it. So yeah, it was a fight, but with the help of DVP Walsh and his class that he puts out with executive leadership, and with my tools that I have in my toolbox, I use those. Ricky got things going with AFL-CIO and Teamsters, and my best suggestion to everybody here is be active, stay active, talk to your other departments nearby, talk to other unions. A lot of union trades that would help us and stand by us 100%, and they were there for us when we needed them. You guys were there, and I appreciate that, and that's my suggestion to everybody.
Yeah, right on. Ricky, your DVP called me, and I know he was pivotal. He was at the table with you, right?
Yes, he was there.
So taking on this battle, and as it escalated and it got to impasse, and we don't have a lot of experience striking public employees. Frankie, when this came to fruition, Frankie actually has strike experience in the IAFF with one of your I-locals, right?
Yeah, that was several years ago with the Burbank firefighters, but an industrial local. And as you know, it's against the law for public sector, public safety employees to strike. So we lose that leverage bar that the Teamsters have in a lot of private sector. But in the private sector, it's against the law to strike unless your contract's expired. So that's where, you know, it takes a lot of guts. I'll tell you what, to you and your members, you know, to your DVP, you out there, to your GP, with the relationships with other Teamsters, which you'll talk about, maybe the nail in the coffin, but it takes so much guts to go, I'm leaving my paycheck behind because they're not treating us and paying us with the dignity that we respect, that we deserve. So it's a hats off.
With that, we got about a 36% pay increase for everybody across
wow.
the board. So, normally about 2%.
Yeah.
36. Wow.
So relationships matter. And one of the things that we did, Ricky Walsh, DVP Walsh, had asked me to reach out to the Teamsters. And we have a relationship. Sean O'Brien, General President of the Teamsters, happens to be a Boston kid, go back a little while with him. I called them up. They wrote a letter to Boeing and basically said, the minute that picket line goes up, you won't see an 18-wheeler roll across the threshold of your gates unless you settle with the IAFF. There it is right there. So when you see a Teamster out there, tell them thank you from the firefighters. But any one bit of advice you got for anybody?
Like we said, stay active, be active with your locals and your outside jurisdictions, anybody that you can. Get them on your side of the table because that's what you need at the end of the day. That's what we had, and Ricky provided that with all the other departments and all the other unions, and that's all we can say for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Case. Appreciate it. All right, now I'd like to welcome up all of our recipients.
You're fucking great.
I told them, why don't you and I stand in the middle, we'll take a picture.
Oh, you're right.
You guys can all go around us and file in somewhere, and we'll figure out what halfway looks like. So I told them that these being inaugural awards, they're going to be like Babe Ruth's rookie card someday. But take a quick picture. Everybody got it in there? You got us? He can count. The guy can count.
Should we go?
Yeah, should we curve in a little? He can't count. Should have kicked the shoes off. All right, thank you all for sharing your experience and your leadership. Thank you, everybody. Great job.
Pat, congratulations. Thank you.
Good job, brother. Great job. So, up next, I'm going to introduce the video of your elected Human Relations Committee members. But before we play that video, I'd like to actually thank Chairman Ricky Walsh for all the work he's done on the committee. He's done a great job reinventing the committee. The purpose and the role of the committee is to make sure that we maintain our unity. We can't let things divide us. That which divides us pales in comparison to what unites us, which is the fact that we're firefighters, that when we go out the door, we don't all always come home. And those of us that do have an obligation, those of us that don't, to protect their families. That's the mission of the elected Human Relations Committee. Make sure that whatever's pulling us apart, we address it and we hold our unity together. And I know we're doing some technical assistance now. We come into a local, we can help out. We're training our committee members, so if you need help, reach out. But none of that would be possible without the godfather of this committee. The godfather, the brainchild of the elected Human Relations Committee that brought this together is with us here today. And I'd like Buddy Master, please stand, legendary 11th District Emeritus Vice President of the IAFF. Buddy, thank you. You're a great man. And thank you, Molly, your beautiful wife, for being here and putting up with us for 60 some odd years.
Brothers and sisters of the International Association of Firefighters, your elected Human Relations Committee members. Representing African American Black category, Vice Chairperson Nicholas Felton from New Orleans, Louisiana. Sherwood Smith from Kansas City, Missouri. Representing Canadian category, Katrina Davison from Vancouver, British Columbia. Clive Dehonorine from Ajax, Ontario. Representing Caucasian white category, Thomas Donovan from Cincinnati, Ohio. Dabney Hudson from Washington, D.C. Representing Disabled Handicapped category, Barry Stafford from Boston, Massachusetts. William Silva from Olympia, Washington. Representing Female category, Secretary Audrey Zarzak from Newport, Kentucky. Barbara Sellers from Shreveport, Louisiana. Representing Hispanic Latino category, Richard Gomez from Houston, Texas. Carlos Pacheco from Kansas City, Kansas. Representing LGBTQ category, Kevin Burkhart from Tucson, Arizona. Christian Cruz from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Representing others than already represented category, David Bautista from Orange County, California. Anita Paratley from San Francisco, California. Representing Veteran category, Roy Mocoso from St. Paul, Minnesota. Jorge Pena from New York, New York. And thank you to IAFF elected Human Relations Committee Chairperson and 7th District Vice President, Ricky Walsh. Brothers and sisters, the elected Human Relations Committee. Brothers, sisters, and guests, please welcome elected Human Relations Committee Chairperson and 7th District Vice President, Ricky Walsh.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So appreciated, and thank you everybody for being here. I want to thank our General President, Ed Kelly, for appointing me to the position of chairperson of this very esteemed committee. It's the work that they do is so important. I want to thank that committee. They're sitting over there. You just saw them. And I'll tell you what, over the last couple of years, there's been some struggles. We're doing things different, but we're learning other things as well. We're learning about each other so that we can better serve you out there. And I don't think that has ever happened before, where we actually get to know each other at a deeper level, and that's what we've been doing there. I want to thank Buddy Moss. I really appreciate the fact that you had vision and you set the path for this committee to move forward. And your lovely wife, Molly. I want to let you know, and everybody should actually take a look. I follow you guys on Facebook, by the way, and you're living the best life you are, and I continue to do that. I just love watching or seeing your posts. So keep doing that. I'm up here to introduce our next speaker. And I'll read the written part and then talk to you just a little bit more about her. Erin Jones has worked in and around schools in different capacities for over 30 years. She's worked and done consultation for nonprofits, government agencies, and businesses. She has worked and lived in 5 states, from the East Coast to the Midwest to the West Coast, in communities that were predominantly white communities, to communities that were predominantly black communities, to those that boasted dozens of languages and cultures. She has been recognized locally and nationally for her work in education and equity. She's also received recognition as an athlete, was invited to try out for 2 WNBA teams after 20 years of playing soccer and 35 years of playing basketball. Erin now runs long distances, 6.45 mile yesterday, 6 minutes and 45 seconds. And Erin and is a devoted regular Orange Theory workouts. Erin and her husband James have been married for almost 30 years, have 3 adult children, 2 who work in education, and 1 who designs video games. I used to introduce her as actually playing for the Seattle Storm, and then I moved it up that she actually played for the Chicago Bulls. She actually hasn't done that, but she did play Olympic basketball. She's authored her book, Bridges to Heal Us, and the first time I met her was during a COVID Zoom, where I was invited in and listened to her presentation. I immediately called her afterwards. I was going through some struggles at the time myself, and she's become one of my mentors. She has a fascinating story. She has tremendous situational awareness, and she's going to pass on to you, if you'll allow, a few nuggets for you to take home. So let's give a really warm IAFF welcome to this wonderful human being, Erin Jones. How glorious is that?
Well, good morning. He's not old enough, but I call him my fire dad, Ricky Walsh. So don't we look alike? I love Ricky. I also want to give a shout out to my Washington State people. Where are you? Where are you, Washington State people? Yeah. I just feel really, really blessed to have been welcomed into the fire community. Also, the Magnificent Seventh. Where are y'all? Okay, I know y'all are here too. Okay. I've gotten to do some speaking for the 7th District and just feel really, really incredibly honored. And then where's my seat partner, Erin? Where are you at? Erin, where are you? Erin is somewhere in here. So Erin and Erin were sitting next to each other on the plane. We both got bumped to first class yesterday. We were very excited. And I sat next to Erin. Erin and I are both adopted. We both live in Washington State. I happen to know Erin's wife, who's a teacher. But even weirder, we get to the end of the flight, and it turns out that Erin sat next to my mother-in-law 20 years ago on a flight when he was in college. And you're wondering, how did we get to that? We had 5 hours to talk. We got to a lot of things. But my brother-in-law is one of the most famous news broadcasters in our state, and I was just mentioning that to him, and he said, oh my gosh, I sat next to your mother-in-law when he first got his job at the news station, and she bragged about him the entire flight. What are the chances that 20 years later, Aaron and I would end up sitting on a flight next to each other? That's my life, though. So I am not a firefighter in the sense of the way that you do fires, but I am a firefighter. So I actually, I'm here today, but 2 days ago, I was putting out fires at a school just south of Seattle. I get called into about 70% of my work right now is when schools or government agencies or businesses have some sort of conflict. Usually it's around race, sometimes around gender, sometimes around politics. I get called in to put out fires. And so I was in a school space where there was a fire between the principal and the students, between the principal and the teachers, between the principal and the parents. I ended up spending 9 hours doing a listening tour, listening to people talk about all the ways they hated this principal. And my job was to try to figure out how to help this school move forward. So I do put out fires, not like you at all. I don't usually write speeches, but I wrote a speech because my Washington State people know I can talk a long time, and I'm not trying to keep you here all day. I know lunch is somewhere soon, and I have about 15 minutes, so I want to make sure that I am succinct today. So you'll see me looking at my phone, which I don't usually do. I don't usually write speeches. But here's the important thing. I have been asked to talk with you today about this moment in time. We are at a moment in time as a nation, I don't know if you've paid any attention, where there are fires everywhere. And sometimes they're physical fires, but a lot of times they are other kinds of fires. And so I've been asked to talk to you about what are some of the strategies that I am using as I work with leaders around the country, from school spaces to firehouses, to businesses, to nonprofits, to churches, to synagogues, to mosques, to help people really think through, wow, how are we going to move together? And I think about something that I heard someone say this morning that just reminds me. The book that I wrote is called Bridges to Heal Us. And us means us, we, but it also means the United States. And one of the things that I know right now is for us as a nation, there's a lot of me happening and not a lot of we. How many of y'all are seeing that in your firehouses? There's some me happening and not some we. And so my job as I fight fires is really getting people from the me, oh, I want this. I don't like the way she talked to me. It's getting from that me to what's best for we. And so I really have 2 questions for you today. 2 questions that I'm asking every firefighter, but 2 questions that I'm asking every educator, everyone in leadership. I believe right now is the hardest time in this country, in my 52 years of life, to lead. I think leading right now is really hard. I think part of that is these phones and all the social media. It's really hard to lead right now. And so here are 2 questions that I want to ask you today to just ground us. Why do you do what you do where you do it? Why do you do what you do where you do it? And then the second question, I didn't used to ask this question, but I'm asking this question now, is what are you doing to fill your bucket, to fill your cup? Because here's the other thing I know about leadership. When you are pouring out into other people and pouring out into other people and pouring out into other people, and you are running on empty, it's like running a car without oil. You can't run a car without gas because it won't run. You can run a car without oil and it will burn your engine out. And I think a lot of leaders are burning the engine out right now. And so I'm going to challenge you to think about, what are you doing every day to fill your cup? So why do you do what you do where you do it? I want to share a little bit of my why story, why I do what I do. I was born in a place that we have heard about today a couple times. I heard Duluth, Minnesota. I heard you. I see you right there. My parents are from just south of Duluth, Minnesota. But I was born in a place called St. Paul, Minnesota. I heard somebody, St. Paul was here too. I heard that. Okay, I thought so. I knew I saw a St. Paul person. So I was born out of the body of a white woman in 1971. My daddy was obviously not white. This is all me. And don't touch it either. I have to tell people that because people be putting their hands in my hair all the time without asking. But I was born out of the body of a white woman in 1971 in St. Paul, Minnesota. And if you don't know this about American history, until 1969, it was actually illegal in most places in the United States for a black man and a white woman to be together. And even though it was not illegal in 1971, it was still unacceptable in Minnesota. And so my mother, when she was found to be pregnant by a black man, was told she could not keep the baby, and so she delivered me in a hospital and walked away and never came back. And so I started life at the Children's Home Society. About 3 months in, 2 teachers from just south of Duluth, Minnesota, small town, Iron Range, Minnesota, showed up at the Children's Home Society, and they said to the director, "Who are the babies nobody wants? That's who we want to adopt." And my dad tells the story of walking through all the cribs, and they told him very clearly, black babies don't get adopted here. And my dad says he saw my crib, and he said, "That's the one we want." I tell people I was not rejected, I was chosen by a family. But do you know the day I was adopted at 6 months, my parents were disowned by both sides of their family. "Why couldn't you just adopt one of ours?" my grandfather said. But my dad, being the most courageous human I know, decided that Christmas he was gonna bring me home and they were gonna love me. And so he combed my hair out with the white people comb. So that's all he had. And he brought me to meet my grandparents on his side, and my grandfather took one look and he said, "She's so beautiful, how could we not love her?" Of course I was beautiful, I was 6 months old. God makes babies beautiful or we will not take care of them. But my grandfather gave the blessing, and I would become an Adamson, loved unconditionally. Now, unfortunately, my mom's side was not so welcoming, nor were the people in our community in Stillwater, Minnesota, where my dad was a teacher. And so when I was 5 in 1976, my dad came home from teaching one day and he announced to the family, "We're moving to the Netherlands." Not Atlanta, not DC, not LA, the Netherlands. I thought we were moving to Neverland to live with Peter Pan, but that was not where we were going. And we would get on a plane for 15 hours and cross an ocean to a land my parents had never visited, where they spoke a language that we had never heard before. My dad had taken a teaching job at the American School of The Hague in the Netherlands. It is the school that serves the United Nations World Court. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news. But the World Court lawyers' children went to my school. International companies' executives' children went to my school, but so did the ambassadors to countries like Japan, Brazil, Peru, Iran, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine. I want you to imagine in 1980 sitting in a classroom with the ambassador for Israel and the ambassador for Palestine's children in the same classroom. Y'all, I've been around fires my whole life. I knew at 9 years old, I wanted to put out fires. So as a 9-year-old kid, I began to teach myself Hebrew and Arabic. I wanted to broker peace between Palestine and Israel because those kids were in my classroom. And I was watching the pain in their eyes every day as they came to school, as their countries, their people groups who were at war with each other. My biggest dream as a kid was to work for the United Nations because I thought that's where fires are fought at the international level. And so I came back to the United States in 1989 for college. I actually got accepted at Princeton, but I was terrified to come to America and go to a really big school, so I instead went to the sister school to Princeton, which is called Bryn Mawr, and it's on the brochure it said it was in Philadelphia, which I was really excited about because, y'all, I had grown up on the Cosby Show. Bill Cosby was from Philadelphia. Now I know he's a hot mess, but I did not know that then. But the other show, we had just gotten the first season of this thing called Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with Will Smith, and I thought, Philadelphia, I could live there. Now, I had studied American history, but I thought America was Will Smith and The Cosby Show. And I get to Philadelphia, August of 1989. I got here a week early to play soccer. I'm actually a soccer and a basketball player, and I got here a week early for soccer preseason. We leave the airport in Philadelphia and drive out to the suburbs because the college is not actually in Philadelphia. The college is in a tiny suburb outside of Philadelphia, and the very first sign that I saw when we got into town was for the golf course. And right underneath the main sign for the golf course, it said these words: "No coloreds or Jews allowed here." And that sign did not come down until 2012. I want you to imagine being a colored girl in a community with a sign right by the campus that reminds you every day, we don't really want your kind here. I'm 2 weeks into college, and this woman walked up to me and she looked me dead in the face and she said, "You know you're only here because we have to have 10 of you." I didn't understand what affirmative action was. I was coming from Europe. We didn't have affirmative action. Like a dummy, I walked across the street to the admissions office, and this poor director of admissions had to tell this 18-year-old girl, there's this thing called affirmative action, and yes, you're one of the 10. And it was the first time in my life that I doubted myself. And I graduated top of my class at one of the best private schools in Europe. Thank you. Here's what I know. At 18 years old, on my own in America, that woman made me think I had not earned my spot. I graduated top of my class in high school. I was captain and MVP of 3 varsity sports. I played 2 instruments in the band, and I was fluent in 4 languages. At 18 years old, I doubted myself. At 52, I know I more than earned my spot there. Now you can say it. But that year would test everything in me, that freshman year. Of course, it's before cell phones, it's before email. I know some of y'all can't even imagine that. Some of us wish we could imagine that before email. But I had no way to reach back to my parents either. And so here I am, this black girl in America, not really sure how to move through the world, but soccer and then basketball kept me going. Do you know, my freshman team, I played every single minute of every game. Averaged about 20 points a game as a freshman. Do you know when the season was over? Not one person checked on me. Not my coach, not the other players. It was as if I didn't exist. I had nowhere to go for spring break. I had nowhere to go on the weekends. And I stopped eating, and I stopped believing I could change the world. One day in April of my freshman year, something in me said, get out of here, and I put my tennis shoes on, and I put my t-shirt and shorts on, and I just started walking, and I didn't even know where I was going. And I ended up in this tiny little town right outside of my college town. And it was a town where the Hope lived. It's a town where the black families lived who worked in the mansions in my college town. And there was a basketball game getting ready to start, and this very tall man saw me, and he said, "You, get out here. You're obviously a ball player. We need one more to play 5-on-5. And I could tell you did not say no to this person. I was like, okay, I've never played street ball before, but we're gonna learn today. And I would play all day, and this man was amazing. He was probably in his late 40s, just incredible, and he had his 2 sons there, and they played professional in South America, and the rest of them were high school kids, and then me. I was the only female out there, but we had so much fun. And the end of the day came, the sun went down, and he took his sons home, and I turned to these high school boys, and I said, who was that guy we just played with all day? They're like, which guy? I said, the guy, Jay. They called him Jay something. They're like, Dr. J. So some of y'all don't know who Dr. J is, but Google him later. I said, who's that? He was really good. They were like, who is that? How do you not know Dr. Julius Erving? I said, I'm from the Netherlands. And these boys looked at me like I had 3 heads. And they said, where is that? I said, it's in Europe. And they said, where is that? And I said, where are you going to school that you don't know where Europe is? And these 3 black boys, about 15 years old, said to me, "We stopped going to school a long time ago." I said, "I thought in America you had to go to school till you were 18. Well, nobody's ever checked on us." And my next question was this: what's your dream for the future if you're not going to get a high school diploma? And I will never forget, all 3 boys in unison said, "We don't expect to live to be 21. Why would we dream about a future?" And I knew in that moment, on the side of a basketball court, what my why was. I knew my parents, as my teachers, had believed in me my entire life. My dad gave up everything he knew to raise me in a place that would love me. And I remember I ran all the way back from that basketball court to my college, and I called the operator, and they called Europe and woke my parents up, and I am crying on the phone. And I said to my mom and dad that day, "Thank you for loving me enough to be my champion, and thank you for teaching the world." My parents have taught thousands of children from all over the world. And I said to them that day at 18 years old, "I am not coming home. I know that I am supposed to be the teacher that you were for me, for kids who look like me, and I'm not coming home." Y'all, that was 35 years ago. I never did go home. I started in North Philly teaching there, and then I moved to South Bend, Indiana, where I actually had Pete Buttigieg in my PE class. I had Pete as an 8th grader. I didn't realize he was going to be the Pete Buttigieg, but I taught in South Bend, Indiana for 3 years, and then I taught in Columbus, Ohio, and then in Tacoma, Washington. And my why has transformed. I now don't just teach children, I teach adults. I see myself as a coach of people. I want us to become the best versions of ourselves. And part of that is figuring out, how do we be together? How do we be a we and not just a me? And that's the work I'm committed to. Why do you do what you do where you do it? Second question, what are you doing to fill your bucket every day? Because here's the thing I know, I am watching people run themselves into the ground. I'm watching leaders run themselves into the ground. I start every day. I started this morning with this. I do meditation every morning. It's really important to me. Start out every day the same way. I run 30 miles a week. Now, I used to be a ball player. Part of the reason I have nails is my reminder you cannot play basketball anymore. Because I don't know how many of y'all played ball, but here's the challenge for me. I hit about 45, and in my brain would say, spin here. I have a nasty spin move under the hoop, and my body's like, nah, we're not doing that right now. And it became a little frustrating. But I also realized when I did some research, do you know that #1 injury of people over 45? Tearing your Achilles, playing basketball with a bunch of teenagers. My husband is a head football coach at a high school. These nails are my reminder. Every time I go watch the boys' basketball game, and Aaron, you do not play, do not get out there. So at 50, I started running, so one direction, just one direction. All of this is just too much. I just go one direction now. So I will be running tomorrow morning with y'all at the 5K. I'm not trying to race it, but I will be running. I will not be at the back of the pack, but I'm also not going to be at the front. Because y'all, it's 3 o'clock in the morning in Washington State that y'all are running. My body is not going to be awake at that, but I will be there. I will be there. But I run, I meditate, and I am very careful what I watch, what I listen to, and who gets my time. Who gets your time? What gets your time? When you're not working, what gets your time? All of that matters. All of that matters. And so I'm going to leave you. I'm actually going to do a class this afternoon based on my book. So if you are looking for a class about how to navigate really difficult times, come to that this afternoon. But I want to leave you with just a few strategies that I think are really important. #1, listen more than you talk. Here's what I know, and I know this from being at the school a couple days ago. People who are really angry and upset often just need to be seen and heard. And there's something really powerful about just sitting and facing someone and just listening to them. So I challenge you to listen more than you speak. Number 2, kindness goes a long way. It feels like there are so many fires burning in the country and across the world right now, and that can feel overwhelming. And what I am challenging people in every space I go to is to be kind. It doesn't cost you anything. Be kind to the people who serve you. Be kind to your baristas, to the cashier in the grocery store, to your Uber driver, to your flight attendant. Kindness is free, and it matters, and I believe there's a ripple effect to kindness. I also want to challenge you, and this I learned the other day, facilitating these conversations with children. The principal came into the room, and she was already fired up, and even though she was just passing the baton to me to listen, her fired up caused the children to be fired up. So I had to tell the principal, I need you to leave the room. I need you to leave the room. I'm going to control the energy here. And here's what I absolutely believe. People will match your energy. If you show up excited about a thing, they will match that excitement. If you show up angry and frustrated, they will match your anger and frustration. If you show up calm, people will match your calm. I dare you to be in control of the emotion that you have. Last strategy. How many of you are people who like to be right? You like to be right? Raise your hand if you like to be right. I bet there's a lot of you in here. Okay. So here's, last thing, I'm gonna do a really teachery thing here, but I have a strategy right now. I think too often in conversations, we want to be right, and sometimes that rightness destroys relationship. So I believe the relationship is actually more important than you being right. And I'll just say, I have now been married for 30 years. Ricky said almost 30 years. I've been married for 30 years. Actually, we got to marry our oldest son on our 30th wedding anniversary. So we will share an anniversary with my husband's best friends. I wish I was my husband's best friend. No, our son is. And we now share an anniversary with them. But we have been married for 30 years. Y'all, I love my husband, and there are some days where he makes me crazy. Marriage is hard, y'all. I don't wake up every morning like, I am so happy to be married to you. I wish that was true. And it's an investment of time. And I will tell you, my husband has 3 master's degrees. He's one of the smartest humans around on the planet. We are both smart people, and there are times where I just want to be right. And what I have learned is I do not speak to him when I want to make him smaller or be right. And here's an invitation to you, and we're going to do a really teachery thing here. So I want everybody's hands out in front of you. Everybody, I'm watching, everybody. It's Teacher Jones right now. Hands out in front of you. So when you are in a conversation with someone and you can feel yourself wanting to make them small, I want you to think about this. Just listen to me and follow my actions. Let's call each other in and up into the best version of ourselves, not out and down into shame. Do that again with me. Let's call each other in and up into the best version of ourselves, not out and down into shame. Now say that with me. Let's call each other in and up into the best version of ourselves, not out and down into shame. So here's how you're going to use that. Next time you're in a conversation, maybe just with one other person, maybe you're in front of your whole local, and you can feel yourself wanting to make people small, I want you to think about, okay, am I calling them in right now? Or am I kind of calling them out? Stop. If you're about to call people out, because here's the thing, shame may change people's accents, but it won't change them. Shame does not change people in good ways. And your being right at the cost of someone's humanity will not create a we out of a me. So next time you get really fired up about something and you want to make somebody small and you want to be right, I want you to think about, okay, am I trying to make them a better version of themselves? Or am I trying to be right here? Pause, breathe, step away, go for a walk, and then come back to it. I want to read to you the last page of my book. And it's my my offering to you, my invitation to you. In this moment, I wrote this book, Bridges to Heal Us, after, when Minneapolis happened, when George Floyd was killed. My mom's side of the family, and I told you my dad's side of the family accepted me, my mom's side did not, ever. We still have a really fractured relationship with my mom's side of the family, who also live in St. Paul, Minnesota. My mom's brother, the day after George Floyd was killed, sent my mom an email. And all it said was, if black people would just follow directions, they wouldn't get killed by police. I want you to think about how that felt to my mother, who's raised a black daughter who's never been in trouble before, who's married to a black man. I have 3 black kids. I want you to think about how that felt to my mom. And my mom is so funny. She texted me a screenshot of the email and she said, honey, I did what you told me. I took a breath for about 3 hours before I sent an email back. And she said, my email didn't really say much because I didn't really have anything to call him in. But I wrote this book after watching my own family have to navigate really difficult conversations. And this is my offering to you all. Stay grateful for every encounter, even the hard ones. Stay curious about those around you, especially those who are not like you. Stay learning. Don't be paralyzed by not having the exact right answer. Keep moving and speaking and disrupting and investing. Keep being and building the bridges we need to heal us. Do you see me on the track? I am running in front of you, behind you, alongside you, reminding you when your lungs burn to keep going, reminding you to keep your eyes on the prize. Run through the finish line, my friends. You've got this. We've got this. I'm going to thank you for every fire you put out and for every fire that you prevent. Together we rise. Thank you.
Awesome. Look at this. Thank you. Of course.